Thank you very much and welcome. My name is Henry Farber. I'm an economist at Princeton University and a longtime member of the Executive and Supervisory Committee of CERGE-EI. I've had the honor to be a colleague of Christopher Sims at Princeton University for more than 15 years. And it's a great honor, particularly for me today, to deliver a short laudatio for Chris on the occasion of his receiving the Karel Engliš Medal for Merit in Social and Economic Sciences, awarded by the Czech Academy of Sciences. A great honor indeed. Let me start by saying that Chris has deep family roots in economics. His grandfather was a labor specialist who was a teacher at Antioch College in the United States and one of the first members of the U.S. National Labor Relations Board, and I guess that was in the 1930s. Chris additionally had an uncle who was a labor economist, a specialty Jan Svejnar and I share with him, and Randy Filer as well. So with such an auspicious family background, it's not surprising that Chris became an economist with a unique mix of skills and interests. While majoring in mathematics at Harvard and studying some economics, Chris knew that he wanted to be an economist who mixed the mathematical rigor of the discipline with application to real problems. After studying economics at Berkeley and receiving his PhD from Harvard in the late 1960s, Chris began his faculty career at the University of Minnesota in 1974 and moved to Yale University in 1990. He then moved again to Princeton University in 1999 and is currently the Sherrard Professor of Economics there. Chris's academic accomplishments are enormous. He has authored many papers in top economics journals and is recognized as one of the leading macroeconomists of his generation. He served as president of the American Economic Association and the Econometric Society. Additionally, Chris is an elected member of the U.S. National Academy of Sciences, and believe me, it's very hard for an economist to be elected to the National Academy. Because the question is often asked, is economics a science? And we've heard about that before, and also an elected member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. But perhaps the ultimate recognition for Chris's contribution came in 2011 when he was awarded the Nobel Prize in Economic Sciences, together with his friend and Minnesota colleague Thomas Sargent, for their, quote, empirical research on cause and effect in the macroeconomy, unquote. I'm not sure I am capable, in fact, I'm sure I'm not capable as a poor labor economist of doing justice to the details of Chris's work. The hallmark of his work, though, is rigorous attention to what the data have to say about some macroeconomic phenomenon in the context of a carefully developed economic model. To me, this combination is a science and an art that is too often given insufficient attention in economics. Along the way, Chris has taken a Bayesian perspective to statistical work that has had an important influence on work done in macroeconomics in a time when most of us use the frequentist approach. Importantly, Chris has developed a method called vector autoregression that is in general use in macroeconomics to analyze co-movements in important variables and to measure how economic outcomes are affected by changes in economic policy and other factors. Just a couple of examples of Chris's use of vector autoregression include looking at the timing and magnitude of the effect of changes in interest rates set by central banks, obviously an important policy problem, or the exchange rate on important economic outcomes like the unemployment rate or rate of growth of GDP. In fact, in addition to widespread use in economics, these techniques developed by Chris are used by many central banks around the world, so his influence is indeed quite general. Finally, Chris has been an influential teacher in economics who's willing to devote tremendous time to curious and able students. Perhaps Chris's best-known student may be Lars Hansen, co-winner of the 2013 Nobel Prize in Economic Science. And there's a story, perhaps apocryphal, that the initial inspiration for Hansen's Nobel-winning work came from a problem set that Chris assigned to him when he was in graduate school. Closer to home, here in Prague, Chris has personally brought Filip Matejka, now on the faculty here at CERGE-EI, into the graduate program in the economics department at Princeton, mentored him, and continued to work with him on important problems. And frankly, according to Philip, it's not clear he would be an economist were it not for Chris. And And I would say my personal experience just this year is that Chris's devotion to students extends to undergraduate students as well. Just this year, Chris mentored the top senior in Princeton's economics department, who is going on to graduate school in economics at MIT. Chris has been an important influence at CERGE-EI here in Prague. For the last several years, he's been a member of the Executive and Supervisory Committee. He also actively participates in academic conferences and economic events in the Czech Republic. In fact, just today, he participated in an international conference at CERGE-EI on what's called rational inattention. In other words, when it makes sense to zone out. And I do that whether it makes sense or not. His frequent presence helps attract top economists to CERGE-EI, and the local community benefits from him tremendously. Let me conclude by saying that Chris Sims is a remarkable economist and a terrific colleague. I can't think of anyone better suited to receive the Karel Engliš Medal. Thank you.
Before presenting the medal, just a few words about the medal. It was created by the Czech Academy of Sciences in 1995. The name of Karel Engliš is, I hope, known to many of you. He was professor at Charles University, at Masaryk University. Between the world wars, he was also a politician. He was Minister of Finance. He was governor of Czechoslovak National Bank. Very important person in our economical history. So let me now to one more sentence. There are Professor Sims is 12th awardee of this medal. The biggest concentration of laureates comes from United States. That's interesting. I can cite some names. Namely, well, there is Professor Jan Kmenta from US, but apparently of the Czech origin. Professor Richard Klant, US. Professor Orly Aschenfelder, Professor Joseph Stiglitz, and the fifth one is Professor Christopher Sims. Professor Sims, it's my extraordinary pleasure to award you the Medal of Karel Engliš. That's a medal, and this is a diploma saying that this medal belongs to you. So that congratulations.
I'm pleased and very honored to receive this medal, especially on the occasion of the 25th anniversary of CERGE-EI. As you've heard, I've been on the external committee of CERGE-EI for the past 4 years or so, and I've learned what a great job the institution is doing in bringing economics of an international standard into the Czech Republic. I was just today and yesterday at a conference here on rational inattention, as has already been said, and this conference drew in researchers from the top institutions in the United States. It's a new area of research that's very promising and rapidly growing, and CERGE, particularly through Philip Matejka, is playing a major role in promoting this area of research. Economic education is very important because economics, I think it's not exactly a science. It's a little harder than most sciences. That's because what we study is constantly changing, and our understanding of it is never complete. And unfortunately, policymakers end up having to make important decisions about economics, about economic policy, in the face of the incomplete understanding that economists have of how the economy works. part of the job of economists is to understand and explain how markets work. Markets do wonderful things, and it's a little hard to explain to people exactly how wonderful they are. On the other hand, markets also malfunction, and when they do, they can create widespread misery and a strong instinct on the part of the public to fix markets and make them stop having such harmful effects. And so the other part of the job of economists is to help understand how to intervene and control the excesses of markets in ways that don't interfere with the positive aspects of markets. Karel Engliš was a policymaker in the Czech Republic and faced these ambiguities and difficulties. Czechoslovakia had, as Tom Sargent explains in a wonderful paper called The Ends of Four Great Inflations, he has a section on Czechoslovakia because Czechoslovakia did not have a hyperinflation at the time. Many of the surrounding countries were having hyperinflations, and that was partly because Czechoslovakia stuck to the gold standard and these other countries abandoned it. Economists at the time understood how the gold standard was supposed to work, and so it was partly on the basis of economics, the pseudoscience or partial science that Czechoslovakia did well during that period. But then during the Great Depression, Karel Engliš was attempted to preserve the gold standard in Czechoslovakia, which was probably a bad idea at that time, because at that time, Keynes's analysis of the effects of aggregate demand and how that could have led to the Great Depression still didn't exist and certainly wasn't widely accepted. If you look at the recent great crisis, I think it was a great benefit to the world and to the United States that Ben Bernanke was a real economic scholar who understood both the history of previous depressions and the macroeconomic theory underlying the dangerous things that can happen as a financial system collapses. And so the US policy intervened in a way that was not done generally in the Great Depression across all countries in the world. So he didn't save us from the crisis. So the crisis happened because markets malfunctioned, because policymakers missed the dangers that were building up. But once it occurred, it could have been much worse if we hadn't had somebody with a strong understanding of, an academic with a strong understanding of how crises work in a policymaking position. So CERGE-EI's mission of promoting research at a high international standard and of educating a new generation of people who can move into policymaking positions and to teaching positions so that the public understands how markets work and what government does to regulate them is extremely important. The economic policy is not made by technocratic decisions of scientists. It depends on a broad understanding by the general public of how markets work and their benefits. And without economic education of the professional classes and ordinary people, great mistakes can be made in economic policy. CERGE-EI is really helping to preserve the economic structure, actually not just in Czech Republic, but also in the world through its international connections and promotion of research. So I'm very honored to receive this award, and thank you very much.